Все нормально.
Okay. Thank you very much for seeing us, President Zelensky. We appreciate it. It seems to me that we are meeting at a difficult time for Ukraine. That's no secret. How bad do you think the situation is just at the moment? It feels as if it's a difficult moment. How do you feel?
Thank you for this question. In the first place, I would like to mention that this is not the first time when we have difficult times, and we never had easy times since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. Yes, there are some complications, and you know, the occupation of our territory started back in 2014. You know, such a country and such a neighbor, and they really want us to be part of something, but Ukrainians would be a nation that wants to have peace and want to be independent. I believe this is a very just desire. Right now, the situation at the front line is really complicated because the new wave started of the Ukrainian offensive at the Kharkiv direction, and a very powerful offensive wave is also taking place in Donbass. But I was just recently talking to journalists, and actually no one's noticing that in Donbass area, Kurakhov and Pokrovsk area, there are more fights, to be frank, if to compare to Kharkiv area. But actually that was a bit unexpected for a lot of nations, that there would be this offensive of Russians in Kharkiv, and we don't know what it would end in. But to tell you the truth, today the situation is controlled. A week ago it was a bit more difficult. And it's clear why it is happening, and actually the moment of crossing the Ukrainian border in Kharkiv region, they use this powerful radio electronic warfare means. You know, there were so many challenges, and to be frank, they were hitting Ukrainian territory with long-reaching artillery, and a lot of actually aviation bombs, controlled aviation bombs were used. So they were preparing this offensive for an extended period of time. And in the east of Ukraine, it's so difficult for people to stay there now. You know, thousands of guided aviation missiles are flying and falling on their heads. Sorry for being that straightforward. And with all this number of missiles, of rockets, they really moved a bit forward in Kharkiv region. Not that much. The deepest spot was 10 kilometers as of now. And Russians were saying, as regards various regions, that Kharkiv is not their aim. They actually started saying it all when they were forced to stop, and when we slowed down their offensive tactics in Kharkiv region. So, you know, they actually tried what they can, and you know, they were saying about this sanitary zone or gray zone within the territory of Ukraine for us not to be hitting at the territory of Russia. Well, it's clear that this would be just mere words so far, and it's clear that we don't have that far-reaching weapons as Russia has got. Unfortunately, we don't have it yet. And to tell you the truth, we were never using the Western weapons to hit the territory territory of Russia. We don't have a green light to do that. We can't risk the whole scope of weapons coming to us, and we can't risk the money, the sanctions against Russia. We don't want to lead the situation to this. Yes, we're having negotiations with our partners for us to be able to actually use the weapons against the military machinery and weapons system located close to the border with Ukraine. We would like to use Western weapons for that, but we don't have any moving forward in that regard so far.
It would be good to talk a little bit more about the equipment, the kind of the tactics, but first I wanted to ask, I was in the Donbass last year. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get there this year. And what I saw was a very determined army with an amazing sense of humour, funnily enough, but one that was already exhausted over a year ago. Already in March 2023, you felt the exhaustion for obvious reasons. So I guess this is my way of getting to the question of your front is not getting shorter, it's getting longer. You know, you have a certain amount of soldiers to protect that front. Kharkiv makes that more complicated. Sumy could make it more complicated still. So the mobilization is obviously crucial to your calculations. It's just been signed into law, as we know, this weekend. How quickly do you think you can get new recruits under mobilization to the front, and how many do you think you need? Just to finish, you said originally 450 to 500,000, then General Syrskyi said, no, it's going to be less than that. So those are my questions, please.
A lot of questions you've got there. So let us start with the very beginning. So the thing that the guys and girls at the front line are not losing their sense of humor, that's good, because they are human beings. They are alive, and you know, this tells us that these people are very wise ones. You know, they say if a person is a wise one, they would have sense of humor, and people shall not be panicking, they shall not be in depression. And sometimes, you know, we see that people are losing extremities in this war, but surgeons are not panicking, are performing the surgical interventions. You shall not be losing hope. You shall be strong enough, but you know, we need to really give some rest to the brain. So what you've mentioned, and you've seen people with good sense of humor, that's good. That's like, you know, energy boost, energy support. When your brother in arms is supporting you, just joking a little bit. Sometimes you are talking over the phone with a girl you love, or with your children, and they tell you some stories. And I believe this smile is really so necessary for our service persons. But the war is so serious, you know, and it's bloody, and it is really exhausting, as you've correctly mentioned. Any war is terrible, and that's clear that people who are fighting since the very beginning of this full-scale invasion, yeah, they are exhausted, including psychologically. This is not just about the physical condition of theirs, right? And we see that it's so painful to lose people you know, people you love, and that's something which is an inherent part of the war, and it hits us and exhausts us so severely in any case. And with every day, the war becomes more and more complicated. That's the truth. This is not a short war. This is a large-scale one. And we are fighting against the army which is really fiercely hating all Ukrainian. We understand they really hate us, and they want to destroy us, 100% of us. So it's very difficult, especially to those at the front line, but they all understand that there's no other alternative rather than protecting their land. In parallel, some steps in diplomacy shall be also taken, but, you know, thanks to the moral strengths of our service persons, and thanks to technical, up-to-date and timely delivery of assistance of our partners. You know, not by words, but by deeds. Not by words, but with some specific weapon systems. And the best approach would be to have that today, or even, as we are kidding, yesterday. So yeah, we have to pay attention to this fatigue, and there shall be rotations. We started the rotations regardless of the fact that so far we didn't get the package of certain weapons, and yes, we have deficit of various weaponry systems, starting with air defense. You know, it really falls on our heads, and we are really talking to our partners that we need air defense systems to protect our civilians and our military, because against guided bombs the air defense is effective 100% if we are using up-to-date systems, especially Patriot. If there's an opportunity to get several more Patriots closer to the front line, the Russians won't be sending anything into our air. The partners know it all, the dates, the number of it all, and between us, we remember that we were hitting down 12 planes in a week, you know, and these 12 planes could bring us 100 or thousands of bombs, and we were hitting them down, but we are not doing it now. We are hitting down less. Why? Because actually the answer is clear. We had air defense system or any other weapon system. We lack something. We lack some spare parts or missiles. So, you know, in order to answer what's needed, what are the complications, in what way to win, in what way to stay strong, and how not to go back but stay on the very same ground and then do our offensive. Well, unfortunately, because of the war and the duration of the war, but thanks God we have enough of experience in order to give a proper answer to any question, not by words but by specific deeds and steps. Well, you asked me. Yeah, sorry, there were many questions.
Yeah. When will they arrive at the? When will the newly mobilized people arrive at the front? How quickly can you activate them?
Well, in the first place, we really need some time to train them, and they need to have sufficient amount of time. For a newly mobilized person who doesn't have a combat experience, for them to have really time for training, for preparation, and then it would be preferable for this person not to go to the hottest spot of the front line, but for this person to still get some, you know, practical skills where the military actions are taking place, but they are not that intensive, and after that the person can go and perform certain tasks, whatever the commanders would see them. Training is of paramount importance, and it's so important to have the reserves in order to have proper rotations, to actually have the rotational troops, forces to help out those who are at the front line. And it doesn't matter whether the person got mobilized, drafted, or they were volunteers. It's not the issue of signing the contract, but as you're standing at the second line and are being prepared, when you're just part of reserve, then you would be getting proper training, and you would be dealing with all these weapon systems. And then it would be great if you have the same weapons when you go to the front line. And sometimes we have trained service persons, but they are not getting the weapons, or some other weapons come to their hands. That's the question, and that's the answer. Well, actually, there are so many factors my answer depends on. Speaking about mobilization efforts, I believe that appropriate draft laws were passed and signed, and all the rest would be the technical issues I just mentioned.
On the issue of tactics, is it true that you are talking to allies, Western partners, about expanding operations? For example, if a plane drops ordnance, if a plane flies towards a NATO country to drop ordnance against your underground gas storage, for example, you want for NATO to be able to take that plane down. For example, glide bombs, right? Glide bombs are becoming a big problem as far as I can tell. They are being shot from planes over Russian territory. You desperately want to be able to take out the planes before the glide bombs even come, but that would mean shooting something down in Russia. Are you in talks with allies to allow you more freedom? At the same time, I would say that those seem like kind of red line sort of discussions.
Red lines, well, they are so conditional. Let us have a look at real-life examples here, not at something rhetorical, but at analytical data. What would happen if NATO countries would be hitting down certain Russian planes? In the first place, the Polish air was actually crossed by Russian planes, and the missiles were dropped at their territory, but they got the signals that they can respond appropriately. They were raising their jets, like Polish jets, into air, and now every time when the missiles are flying within the western Ukraine, where we have the key gas facilities and gas transportation system, actually, yeah, they're trying to hit these gas reservoirs, and when the air defense system are hitting them down, they can be falling wherever. And also, if we don't hit them down, there's still some share of the missiles that would be going and falling within the territory of the other country, NATO country. So I believe there are certain examples today, a lot of them, including the gas reservoirs where we have not just Ukrainian gas, but gas belonging to other countries. Slovakia, Hungary, Moldova would be affected, NATO countries and non-NATO countries. Just people won't get this gas if Russians hit our gas storage facilities. Whether Russia can hit them, yes. Whether we can protect them with Patriots, yes. Whether we have the Patriots there, no. Whether our partners can give us Patriots, I believe they are obliged to. But when they're saying we don't have those, we can't give those to you. The question is, but you have the planes, right? As the Russian missiles are flying in the air of Ukraine, the Polish planes are taking off. Can they hit down those missiles? I believe yes. Whether that's an attack against the NATO country? No, not really. They would potentially take down a missile which can actually hit the gas storage facility. Are they protecting them? Yes. They are hitting down the missile which can potentially fall on the heads of the citizens of NATO countries, but it will be too late if they are hitting this very missile in the air. Well, when Iran was sending missiles to Israel, Israel was shooting at them, not in the airspace of Israel. Were they hitting down the planes with NATO weapons? Yes. Why in one case it's possible, in the other case it's not? What's the difference there? And the missiles are flying towards the NATO countries regularly, and I gave a signal to my Polish counterparts, to leaders of US. I've mentioned it all. We are ready to sign all the papers whenever a Russian missile is hit within the territory of Ukraine. They won't be held liable if it falls down within the territory of Ukraine. If something explodes, if somebody is killed, they won't be held liable. We are ready to cooperate. We are ready to find any legal mechanisms, but the issue of the desire to do so is still there. Everybody is saying this word, which sounds the same in all languages. Everybody is afraid of escalation. So, Ukrainians are dying. Well, everybody got used to that. That's not escalation, you know, because Ukrainians are here in Ukraine. Ukrainians are not human beings. Well, there's just this world, it's a separate thing, but Ukraine is a separate world. It sounds to me like that. That's the attitude, right? And in Israel, other people live. Thanks God that they've protected civilians there. We wish them all the best. But, you know, that's the case, unfortunately. What other conclusions can I draw? And, well, yes, there's this huge deficit and lines for air defense. You know, F-16 is out there. Give us more F-16. We all saw them and we all know they are there. Everybody knows how many we need. 300 planes are being used by Russians against the territory of Ukraine. We would need minimum 120, 130 in order to counter their attacks in the sky. If you can't give that to us, well, let us come back to the issue. You can't give us F-16, you can't give us air defense. Let us go back to the conversation about those planes, those fighter jets you have. Please use them and protect the civilians.
It seems that, you know, you are rightly kind of, well, maybe wrong. It seems to me you're rightly frustrated at the fact that things are slow to come. There's always long debates. There are delays. You know, you need stuff and you need it fast. There are also things that you're doing without sort of necessarily direct Western support, which is long-range drone attacks on Russian oil refineries, hitting air bases, fuel depots within occupied Ukraine. How important are those? Could they win the war for you?
Well, that's something which helped us a lot. We boosted the manufacture of long-range drones by Ukrainian companies. We started producing a lot of FPVs for the Frontline. It really helped us a lot. Maybe 3-4 months ago, we reached very serious volumes, and it really helped us because back then we had huge complications with artillery. So FPVs were used at the front line in significant amounts, and actually we've managed to increase the number of FPVs, and it really closed or breached a certain gap, the deficit of artillery. There are other types of drones, long-range ones. We started producing them, a lot of them, but not enough. We started using what actually can protect us. We are hitting really their energy sector because they are hitting ours, and the quality of these drones is good. We've achieved good scopes of production, but we lack money for that. And actually one of the formats we've offered to our partners, meaning there are packages they are voting for, there's weapons they are giving to us, and whenever there's a certain delay, we need to have our own, reserve. And when we can produce it ourselves, just let us do that. So drones, especially long-range ones, would be one of the formats. We need appropriate money to produce those, and some states, some countries started directly financing production of these drones. And actually the radio electronic warfare systems are also helping a lot. We have several types of this warfare, and we can be speaking about the thousands already, because without this, neither critical infrastructure, nor civilians, nor depots, nor schools and hospitals will be protected. We are working in this regard to the maximum extent possible.
Thank you.
Щось ще ви запитали, я забув.
You asked anything else? Maybe I forgot
Було
it.
ще про далекобійні ракети.
Yeah, about long-range
Питання, наскільки це допомагає,
missiles
наскільки це дозволяє
and whether it helps. So, the long-range missiles like Storm Shadow, Scalp, Atacams, right? Meaning from Great Britain, from France, and from United States. 3 types of missiles we were getting and we planned to use. If we had an opportunity to use them in the appropriate numbers, the Russians wouldn't be capable of crossing the border of Ukraine in these quantities.
Do you mean using, I know you're pushing to be able to use those against Russian Federation territory, which is not yet allowed. You are in those negotiations, are you, with partners, to allow you to strike Russia?
Let me tell you the truth. The conditions of this war would be the conditions of survival of Ukraine. We are very grateful to our partners that they are helping, but this is happening so slow. And every decision takes ages. We arrive at this decision later on, but it's like 1 year too late as I see this. I'm telling you, as I believe it is. And I'm sure we can have a proper dialogue and we can reach the consensus as regards hitting the long-range missiles to hit the weapons of Russians located alongside with Ukrainian border. I believe we will reach that decision because the same happened with giving us tanks and armored vehicles, Patriots, right? And you know, we're still 1 year late. If Patriots were given us at the very beginning when we lacked drones and when the Russians were using missiles, they would see that missiles are being hit down. They would see it makes it not possible for them to hit our energy facilities. There would be no blackouts in Ukraine. Moreover, we could preserve all the scope of Ukrainian energy generation, but we have what we have. Still a huge step forward, but there were 2 steps backwards, unfortunately. So we need to change the pace, the paradigm a little bit, and we need to be faster than Russians. Russians are not that speedy and that fast. For example, if we speak about radio electronic warfare, as soon as we really start treating it all seriously, producing something, they are lagging behind us, and we need money, we need partnership support for us to actually expand the production of drones further. And that's always the case. Where we are speedy, they are lagging behind. And then there's a gap, 6-8 months, when the negotiations are taking place. And then 2-3 months are needed to do the delivery. A year passes. I would like not to be using this benefit at the battlefield.
Just to move away from the battlefield, we've got the peace talks obviously coming up, which I'm sure you would kind of like to discuss in Switzerland in June. First of all, you know, what realistically you think can be achieved, given that we all know, right, that Russia's not going to be there, China, we don't know, but what can you realistically expect from it? And then I was going to ask you a question about China after that. Please.
In the first place, agenda of this very meeting, item number 1, political pressure on Russia and involvement of the great amount of countries, the majority of the world actually. This is of paramount importance. Serious economies, serious politicians, serious countries who've got influence at all the continents of the world. And we are not forcing anybody to do anything right, but actually to have a dialogue on the basis of our formula, which was developed, and there are three key items there. That's energy security, nuclear safety. We need actually this great amount of countries for them to develop the plan. Why Russia is not involved? Because they are boycotting it all, and they won't actually will find their peace unless we follow their ultimatum. So we can't actually allow them to take the initiative, because they will start pressurizing other countries, and they have a lot of options to pressurize other countries: foodstuffs, weapons, and they've got their troops in Africa, energy, nuclear power, etc. So this agenda can be Russian agenda. This is our war, meaning the war against us, which is why involvement of all these countries, this would not be just politics, that's the pressure. It means all these countries are saying, yes, we are ready to help you. We are ready for various proposals, but they are recognizing that Ukraine shall take the initiative. Then nuclear safety, there will be this plan prepared at these meetings, and the technical committees or representatives of these countries will consider it, and then they will invite the representatives of the Russian Federation. But the plan will be out there already, as it was with the grain initiative. Ukraine, Turkey, and the General Secretary of UN had an agreement, and only then they passed it to the Russian Federation. And actually, all the stakeholders were agreeing this plan with us, and only then with Russians. And actually, what's important, we are not sitting at one table, and they can't veto it all, but they are vetoing any proposal of Ukraine, as you might know, which is why actually this would be a dead end. The same here, speaking about every clause at this Pit summit, we didn't want to overload the agenda too much. We want the three key items to be bringing countries together rather than dividing them, which is why there is nuclear safety, then food security, and that would be actually Azov Sea and Black Sea deblocked. And the third clause, returning children who were kidnapped by Russia and exchange all for all, meaning the humanitarian area. These three items, if all the countries support them, as I've mentioned, then there will be all these technical solutions, there will be the plan, and then this plan will be passed on and presented at various platforms to Russia. They will be communicating with the representatives of Russia, which is very important. It's very important to stick to this structure. We on our side will do our best, and then Russia will actually have to talk to the majority of the world rather than just Ukraine, and that's important. If we succeed in this, and if we are successful in covering these three clauses, if we have the solidarity of all these countries, there will be some disputes, that's obvious, but if in general we reach the consensus, and if we achieve the proper plan, we can proceed to part 2. Speaking about the items of the plan that will end the war. Nobody is saying that Russia will say yes tomorrow to end this war, but that's important. That initiative is ours because they are fighting and killing us.
How big a problem do you think China is in this war, and what can you do about it?
We would like China to be present at the peace summit. That's very important for us. We had a direct dialogue, a telephone conversation with the leadership of the country, with His Excellency Xi, and he said that he respects the territorial integrity of Ukraine and sovereignty of Ukraine. The issue of food security, of nuclear safety is also the priority for China, and I believe that's very important for them to be present, because actually after this summit it would be clear who really wants to end this war and who wants to still preserve good relations with the Russian Federation. And the balance would be in what? In supporting the summit. And if you don't support the formula offered by Ukraine, you're still supporting the summit and you're expressing your opinion. I can understand that. But if the country is not supporting the summit, but they are just waiting for implementation of Putin's plans, then everything's clear. And this would not be a just peace. This is not about ending this war then.
One final question on international relations. Obviously, you've been asked this before, but I feel I should ask you. What are you and Ukraine doing to ensure or to build support among Donald Trump's Republican wing in America for obvious reasons? What are you actually doing to bring that on board? Because you must surely see the risk if it doesn't go right.
Well, I've mentioned the issue of risks is out there on a daily basis. You just need to forecast these risks and then you can somehow survive, and we would like to actually win, not just survive. That's the task we have in mind. Speaking about United States and Trump's policy, I believe whatever is happening there, what kind of policy is being implemented there, what are the outcomes of the elections, you know, there's this still small thing. They were not voting for this package of assistance, but it was voted for at the end of the day. I wouldn't say that Republicans are against against Ukraine. Unfortunately, it happened so that the issue of internal policy between Democrats and Republicans, unfortunately, in their relations, Ukraine is still in the agenda. I don't want Ukraine to be in their agenda. We are protecting the values of the world, right? But nevertheless, even if we do not desire that, we are part of their internal politics and we are involved in these elections to a certain extent, right? Because elections really have influence to the whole world. I mean, elections in the United States. And, you know, that's really such a coincidence in time that Ukraine is high in the agenda there, and every side had their own views towards what's going on. But both parties supported this package, which is why I wouldn't say that as of today I see some maximum risks. I don't believe that Republicans are against support granted to Ukraine, but there are certain messages we can hear from them. Well, they are causing concerns in any case. This is not because we have our own vision and they've got their own vision. Everybody has got their own vision, but it's important that sometimes these two visions coincide. Only then we reach the consensus, and consensus in times of war is vital. Consensus inside the country and consensus in the world. To put it in other words, unity, and then we will be stronger than Russia. But if we actually don't find the common grounds, Ukraine and United States, or Europe and United States, if we have some huge misunderstandings, profound misunderstandings, this will make our alliance weaker, and we will be weaker than Russia.
So it's 5 years ago today that you became president. We've seen pictures of you, I think in this building actually, anyway, somewhere around here. It's been an extraordinary 5 years for obvious reasons. How do you think you've done? "5 years, you know, that's not it yet.
I'm going to continue because of the martial law. So it's difficult to assess my activities within this past 5 years. That would not be that ethical, I believe now. And you know, somebody from a side have to be assessing my activity and how I did. That would be just and that would be proper. I'm not going to challenge what people think. And you know, truth is always somewhere in between. And I am glad that all these challenges well, we were not turning a blind eye towards all these challenges, and I'm happy that I have a sober look and understanding. I'm happy to be a president of such a nation who didn't turn their backs towards the hazards, risks, and they were really fighting for what was close to their hearts. But this is not over, and this is not the end of the story, so I believe we need to be moving forward together till the end, the victorious end, though today some people are skeptical towards the word victory. I understand that's difficult because it takes so much time, but we are fighting for the independence of the country, not on paper, but in reality. And there is no independence without obstacles, and that's difficult. I'm sorry that these obstacles are so difficult and these challenges are so difficult. We are losing so much, but that's what we currently have. I'm proud to be the president of Ukraine. That's how I look back at these 5 years.
And you mentioned victory there, which is very interesting, because you know that there are people out there, more and more of them, saying, Zelensky can't mean 1991 borders. He can't mean that anymore. You know, the reality is different. He's going to have to compromise. You've heard it. What do you say to those people?
Well, I don't really hear those voices.
I do, but they probably don't dare tell you.
Well, in order to tell that to my face, you have to be sure of that 100% of what you are saying, and you have to be very self-confident. I don't think there are a lot of people who really know how this war would end and when and what would be the outcome of this war. There are no such people out there, and it all depends on us. The war can end with the victory. It can and by very significant losses. We understand it all. And that's the question each and everyone shall ask themselves. How you see this, in what way you see this, what do you see, and whether you are ready, regardless of anything, to remember that yeah, we are united as one country. As you have just one family, you won't have other country, and you might not have other chances to fight for this country. And, you know, there might not be the other chance to become independent of the Russian Federation. When you are speaking about the borders, I would like to tell you the issue of borders would not be just the issue of territories, right? This is a very profound issue. We had borders, and we have borders, not legally, but physically. We had Crimea. What did we influence in Crimea? What did we influence there? Russian fleet was there, and Russians were all over the Crimea. They were actually controlling the Crimea. Nobody could raise their voice there. Let us be frank. Nobody had their voice which could be raised. Neither Ukrainians nor Crimean Tatars. And that's not the issue of nationality. Actually, Russians were considering it as the summer cottage house, as a dacha, right? Just to sit there, just to pay some money. They came from Moscow, they are rich and, spend some money at this summer resort, and they will spend a few nights next to the seaside. That was their attitude. They treated people as slaves there. I believe that was the attitude of Russians. And let us have a look at our country. Everywhere, at all institutions, at the cabinet of ministers, at the parliament, even as I became the president, the second major party was pro-Russian. When it was happening, 30 years passed after Ukraine gained its independence. Was it really the full-scale independence? 1990s, Russia was weak and collapse of the Soviet Union happened, and nobody even thought to use this weakness of Russia to create a strong Ukraine. Everybody was, sharing, you'll get this very factory, I'll get that. But Baltic countries were so wise, they got it, and they actually approximated themselves to Europe, to NATO, and then they got this security. And what was happening in Ukraine? Well, we were friends with Russia, Europe. Well, we balanced between Russia and Europe for several years. People were against NATO because they were intimidated by Russian TV, saying NATO was an enemy. We sold the strategic nuclear weapons when we actually said no to the nuclear power we had. So, as we are speaking, this is the chance to become independent. I would like to resort to everybody now, to address everybody. This would be just, big words. The issue would not be just about borders of 1991. That would be the issue of independence of Ukraine within these borders. And this independence shall be in our heads. And, this is not that we are eager to become part of European Union. We just want to be as you are in Europe, because we share the same values and we are really selecting these values. We want to live adhering to these values. We are part of European society. That's the key message. And nobody is actually, Russians don't want to let us go. And now we have such a united society which started protecting its independence. This is a very global issue, and I would like to underline, this is not just the issue of territories, but the issue of independent territories with independent people.
Кілька персональних питань. Окей. Пане президенте, ми перейшли вже до 5 років президентства.
We started talking about these 5 years of your being a president of the country. 5 years ago, what did you think about this step? Did you even imagine what you are facing now?
Я сам прийшов з бізнесу.
I came from business, and what I wanted 5 years ago, well, I wanted to have a very liberal country with a liberal economy, and I believe that I wanted the country with free people and to end the war. This would be two things I was really eager to achieve, and this was not something on paper. You remember the Normandy format, and I was going there, I was talking to Putin. I really wanted that. That was my desire, and I did my best, everything I could. And there was no support to this solution on the side of European countries and inside our country, but I was promising this to my voters, and I wanted to have the reforms. And actually we've introduced a lot of reforms, the digital one, the land reform. So a lot was done before the full-scale invasion, and then later on we became the candidates, the EU candidate country. You know, in times of war, that's still a lot. But whether I expected this would, everything would happen like it's happening, no. We were introducing reforms for 5-6 months with no problem. Then COVID hit. We continued voting for laws, draft laws. But then was this huge challenge, COVID-19, and we were learning how to live together with COVID hand in hand. We actually, right after COVID, faced the full-scale invasion, right after it. So it's been 2.5 years of war now.
Okay.
2.5 years. Just a little bit less than 2.5.
Мені здається, у вас не було жодного вихідного.
I believe you never had a weekend, a day off. How are you holding up? Well, my loved ones are supporting me, and my family gives me the strongest emotions. That's really speaking about emotions. But what keeps you rolling and what urges you to work from morning till night and sometimes from morning till morning? That would be the desire to fight our territory back, to win, not to lose. Ukraine, that's a huge responsibility, and I'm always treating other people with huge respect, and I don't think there is one person who can become successful in isolation, can become successful, reach, whatever. I believe this is always support of others that help you, and Ukraine really gave me a lot, and I used to be a very successful man before I became president, and I really wanted to serve Ukraine, and I believe this was a good thing to do, and we have no right to lose now. We don't have a right to lose. That's a huge, historic responsibility. We shall not be scared of this enemy and the fact that they are great. You know, at a certain moment in time, everything big can become small, and that's the question we have to ask ourselves. We can stay longer, stand our grounds longer than they are capable of depleting our resources. I'm sure we will be fighting back as fiercely as we can, and we actually we're fighting for the whole world, because this is not just the issue of Ukraine, that's also the issue of support from the partners who are supporting us to the maximum extent possible.
Спочатку ви сказали, що
At the very beginning you've
ми
mentioned
пам'ятаємо цю зустріч, це було,
we remember this
ви
meeting.
хотіли діалогу з
You
Путіним,
wanted
цей
a
діалог
dialogue
був.
with Putin. You had this dialogue, you wanted some conversations, and it didn't yield any good results. Would you like to sit at one round table with Putin again now to have negotiations? Well, as of today, he is not an independent figure, independent person. That's the problem here. In the first place, he was brainwashing people, but ultimately he was brainwashed himself. He's in this bulb of his own now, informational bulb, and he really has just one desire to destroy us. And you can't be sitting at one table with a person whose ultimate goal would be to destroy you. And you can't find that proper dialogue with this person. So Peace Summit would be one of the formats, because we need to prepare the ground for that. And we need to draft a strong document to have more pressure towards Russia, and also be actually doing our best to deal with their pressure. Putin is becoming older. Anyway, he'll die someday. And this is not that we have to be just waiting for that moment. No, it will eventually come. But now we can't surrender our state, our country. Later on, it will be so difficult to have it back. You know, it might happen as it was with the Crimea after 2014. So we we lost Crimea and Donbass back then, and everybody started forgetting about that. The world won't be thinking about Ukraine all the time. Everybody has got their own challenges. We've raised this wave of attention towards Ukraine, this informational wave, and we are not alone now thanks to that. And we've managed to fight back certain territories, but now not everybody is as strong in the West as they used to be at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and we shall not surrender. This is a chance. That's my personal opinion here. Which is why, well, he's not an independent figure. He's afraid of China, there's Arab world as well. He's not an independent person, and he gives this wave of narratives that Ukraine is being guided by the United States, but he is actually dependent on this big money surrounding him, and he will leave Kremlin only dead. And, you know, there are other people who are forcing him to stay within the system. We need to find sore spots, weak points in this system. We need to be looking for those soft points, and we'll find them. If we fight every day and are looking for those soft spots, we'll win. Regardless of the difficult situation, because the mood is really of gray color now. And speaking about your popularity in the country, what would you like to mention to Ukrainians who are in this very gray mood now? What's your message? In the first place, my message number one would be that I'm grateful that they are with Ukraine and they are Ukraine. And I don't want to be splitting people using the approach, those who are still in Ukraine and those who left the country at the very beginning of the war. And I'm grateful to those who left Ukraine but came back eventually, and those who stayed, because some people, a lot of people were in shock. Somebody was evacuating their children but then was coming back. So, you know, people are so different, and they were leaving the country due to various reasons, and you can't use like one approach to it all. It's war, you know, who faced what, and it's difficult to assess it all. People perceive war differently. Everybody has got their own war. Some Russians came to home of somebody got married at the front line. You know, all these stories are so different. We all feel the war differently, but we are all united by this war as well, and we'll actually leave this war behind us differently as well. But the key thing would be to preserve our values. We have an opportunity to be the Ukrainian nation with our own country. That's very important. Those who are now in Ukraine, I believe they shall not hate those who left Ukraine and who are abroad. Those who are abroad shall be decently treating those who are in Ukraine, even more decently. Everybody has got complications, but those who are in Ukraine, they are having more difficult times. And I'm very grateful to all the Ukrainians, to service persons, to medics, to teachers who are going to the bomb shelters every day and who are delivering the knowledge online. This will all yield good results. I'm very grateful to them. And they are working hard, they are suffering, and this will all leave the positive trace, will lead to positive outcomes. And I don't want to be a prophet, I'm just a human being, but I believe that our military and those civilians who are just working, I want to thank them, those who are just paying taxes. This is not some mantra, this is right. if you are fighting, you have to live a frank, decent life today in Ukraine and pay taxes. This is also your fight. And you are helping Ukraine to survive that way. So all I want to mention now, not hatred brings people together, but love. And it's not about hatred towards Russians, but it's about love towards Ukrainians, love of Ukrainians towards each other. And this love brought us together. And Ukrainians love their home, love their country. So this was not actually about Russian raping a child just to steal their microwave device. No, this is about our love, and it actually brings us forward, forces us to go forward. They are enemies for us, that's clear. And this is just an enemy, and there are no feelings towards the enemy. There can't be any sentiments here. Hatred is also a sentiment, you know. This is just an enemy. We need to destroy the enemy, not pay attention, no Telegram channels, not perceiving their narratives, just to analyze a bit more profoundly, to understand what's really happening and to know that the enemy is there. And we don't have an enemy inside of our country. There are people who are mistaken and who are misled, but they are not the enemy. And that's my message. I want us to remember that our strength is in our love towards Ukraine, but not in our attitudes towards Russia. It's not even Russia, it's Russia.
Дякую. Якщо хочете щось ще додати.
Thank you. If you want to add anything from yourself.
Thank you so much.